This is Marketing Jam, a show featuring the brightest minds in marketing.
Brought to you by Canada Post. Head to canadapost.ca/insight podcast for ideas to add value to your marketing.
Well, I want to welcome you to the next episode of Marketing Jam. I am so excited to have Ron Tite here. This episode, of course, is brought to you by Canada Post, and Ron Tite is featured in the latest episode of Insight Magazine, so you can actually, right when you open up this hot pink, or some call it hot orange, this might be the controversy, is this pink or is this orange? Edition, he is right there, first article that you can read. So thank you, Canada Post, for sponsoring the show. And those of you, if you don't have a subscription yet to Insight Magazine, it is full of articles and insights from people like Ron, and also some great case studies of some mail campaigns that have been happening around the world and right here in the great country of Canada. So Ron, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Darian.
No, it's so great. So tell us about maybe your origin story. How did you end up starting Church+State, your agency?
Like many people, I was at a multinational before that. I was executive creative director at a multinational network. And, I saw that the world was changing. And I think, and I'm not anti-network agency or anything. I think agencies can do a lot of great work and from all shapes and sizes. And I was just, I was literally I was in Montevideo shooting a TV commercial for a large CPG and stepped back and saw a crew of 45 people and I said, how are we still doing this? Like, how are we still flying halfway around the world? And so I quit, and I just thought, I really personally want to explore new ways of doing this. I thought that nobody was looking at the ecosystem of marketing, is that everyone were pointing at clients and people were looking at and pointing at agencies, but that we are all in this together. And that includes the content people. So, people were saying CPGs need to redefine themselves. It's like, yeah, maybe, but so do agencies and so do like traditional newspapers and broadcast networks. And I just saw the blurring of the lines between kind of advertising and content. And so I quit and started my own, and I promised myself I wouldn't work with any clients I'd worked with before, and I wouldn't work with any people I'd worked with before. And it was just really starting fresh and a fresh perspective. Okay. And that was in 2012, and now we're 20 some odd people, I guess, here in Toronto, and it's been great.
And what would your agency specialize in when someone asks?
We really help brands navigate the blurry lines between advertising and content. Okay. And sometimes that comes from we own a production company, so sometimes it's really just on the production side. Sometimes it's brand strategy in navigating those worlds and how do you set yourself up for success. And other times, like, strategy is done, but we need help kind of with the tactics and the marketing plan and executing that. And other times it's from the beginning of, like, how do we create a brand that can now thrive in this blurry, busy world. And so we do everything from, we're the digital and social AOR for Walmart Canada, and to, we just finished a business transformation consulting assignment for all the home shows in Toronto. So yeah, it's the lines are blurry and we just like to bounce between them.
Cool. And I saw that you did for CBC, the new show Working Moms. You helped get the season opener, just get a lot of eyeballs on it, and you worked with influencers and creating really great content, like animated GIFs.
Yeah, we know that it's such a great example, right? The blurry lines of is an influencer like a content creator? Are they content? Are they an ad? Are they a sponsor? Are they a partner? Like, we think you don't get caught up in the definitions of that, because then you limit yourself, by the definition. So we know that there are people who connect with other people, and we know that those people are credible, and we know that those people are also like-minded to certain brands and initiatives. And so so CBC, we've done a couple of things. One, we used online media channels and content creators to drive traditional broadcast viewing. But we also there was a CBC radio show called This Is That, and we published a book So again, it's like a blurry line. Like, is the book an ad for the radio show? Is the radio show an ad for the book? It doesn't really matter. They really just all need to complement one another and be good on their own and know that they support an overall goal, be that, revenue, brand awareness, or any other metric you want to throw at it.
So a more holistic look is what you're saying.
Yeah. I think agencies and clients have got caught up in, what are the metrics of advertising? And, certainly that was part of the article in Insight Magazine was, how do we balance this world between creativity and predictability? And the predictability that, a hard data approach where you know exactly what performs when and how and how much. And how do those two things coexist? And I don't think they do. I don't think they do at all. I think that creativity becomes predictability. That, every great artist knows you make way more money from the print than you do from the original. But if you just go to the print without creating an exceptional, wonderful, unique, original, the print sales are going to suck. And so I think a lot of marketers are jumping straight to, well, let's just look at the metrics and let's just see what works and let's just kind of, teach the test kind of thing. And that doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. So you need brilliant creativity to cut through, and then you optimize and that brilliant creativity so that it becomes predictable in nature and that you know how much you're going to get from it and where's the most efficient place for that to be and what type of person that drives, what type of action that person takes, all that kind of stuff. You need all of that. But while you're perfecting the assembly line of predictability, you always have to be thinking about what's next, what's the next original thought that we can transfer over.
So Ron, as someone who is a creative and working in this agency life, how do you nurture that prophetic gift, that ability to see into the magic ball? Like, what does that look like? Does it look like going on walks? Does it look like going to some retreat center? Or is it reading something? Is it eating something? Is it sleeping in a certain way? What advice can you give other creatives or people who want to be creative out there?
It's weed.
Okay.
No.
Okay, I was like, all right, keep going here.
No, I can now say that because it's legal. But no, it isn't at all. I think that the biggest barrier to creativity, to true creativity, is people assuming that they don't have the ability. And so they sit down to crank on an idea and they think, I don't, it didn't come to me in 3 seconds. Therefore, I'm not very creative. And I take offense of that. Like, what, you think that as a creative person, I sit down and just this great ideas come from my pen or my fingers? Come on. No, it takes work. It takes commitment. It takes focus. And if you need the sweet, special space, you need your log cabin in the woods with the crackling fire, I'm sorry, you're not working hard enough. You're just making excuses for not having the commitment and dedication to sit down and do the work. And so that's the first step, is that, you really need to be focused. The second step is that we typically, for creative inspiration, that we need to look beyond the either the category that we're in or the specific problem we're trying to solve. And I think that there's a lot more creative space and inspiration in the metaphors or in the analogies or in the parallel universes of people or companies or industries that are going through similar things, even though they look completely, like they're a completely different place. And so, well, that means you need to step away from your desk and see the world. It means you need to go and you need to consume stuff on Netflix, and you need to go to an art gallery, and you need to talk to people who don't just sit at home and reading communication arts. Like, you just need real people with real experiences and real perspectives, and look at what you can learn from those people and how you can integrate their experiences into yours. And that, I think, is where, great creative inspiration comes from, is seeing other people do it in completely different places. I just shared something the other day on LinkedIn that happened 7 years ago, and it was Led Zeppelin was being inducted into the Lincoln or the Kennedy Center, and so they were being inducted, and the two sisters from Heart, played Stairway to Heaven, and they had Jason Bonham, John Bonham's son on the drums, and the entire performance, it still blows me away. It still blows me away 7 years later that they took one of the most iconic and kind of not boring songs, but I mean, it's just been, we've heard it so many times. And like, how are you going to do that in a unique and original way? And they did it. And they sat down and they worked their butt off to come up with such a unique perspective on that song. And it still blows me away to this day. And I think, man, if they put that effort into that performance, that inspires me to do better at whatever I'm working on today.
That's amazing. So as far as like books, podcasts, e-newsletters that you subscribe to, can you recommend anything for marketers out there?
Well, I think we do need, as marketers, I think we need to elevate our thinking beyond marketing. Not that there are a lot of marketing stuff that I love, but
so don't just read Strategy Magazine.
No, I mean, it's a great magazine. It's great.
Yeah.
To see what's going on in the industry, but you should be reading Harvard Business Review. I mean, you should be looking at the challenges that leaders face. You should be looking at the challenge of a process or of a production environment. You should be looking at how people are process reengineering, a complete fulfillment process, like all those things. What is HR concerned about? So that you get a total view of the organization. So we need to step away from marketing. And then the other thing is, what do you listen to outside of the space? Right now, for example, I've got two podcasts that I'm listening to. One is called Gravy Train, and it is the podcast exploring the Rob Ford saga and how he became mayor of Toronto. And on the other is something called Three Clips, and it's Jay Akunzo, who's a great podcaster out of Marketing Showrunners. And Three Clips looks at what can marketers learn from great podcasts in small little ways. So one's really, really tactical to get inspired, but the other one's completely outside the category. So, those are two of the things I'm listening to right now.
So I got to ask, again, it may not be current when this comes out, but Ryan Reynolds' response with his Aviation gin ad that he responded to with the bike ad that came out that had a lot of controversy. What are your thoughts on this and what Ryan did and how they responded so quickly?
I think it was brilliant. I don't think the creative was brilliant. I think what was brilliant was that they got the right actress at the right time, and they were so nimble in pulling all that together within 72 hours or whatever it was. And my fear is that this will become the new Oreo dunk in the dark that people will be talking about, in a way. But I think it was great, nimble. And what I love about that is that most of the marketers listening to this right now, they know that their team would still be trying to book a bloody boardroom to talk about the idea of maybe and how are we going to get people on side and how are we going to, sell it through to Mary because she thinks it's going to promote drinking and Todd's going to be worried about the cost and it's 4 months later and you've blown, either $60,000 in agency time or favors and you end up with nothing or you compromise it all. They had a quick idea. They did it quickly. They executed, and the creative was not brilliant, but man, it was timely. And when it's that timely, it doesn't have to be brilliant.
Yeah, no, that's great. So,
now,
are you and
I will say the danger is that every marketer goes to their agent and goes, "We want that."
Yes.
And then you're like, what? And then you end up with agencies building war rooms on Oscars night, waiting to respond to stuff just happens. Like the power of it was that it was organic and they weren't looking for it, but it just occurred. And there was not like there was a team looking and waiting for something that they could make a spot for.
Yeah, no, it's a great story. Ryan's like, hey, we should send her a year's worth of gin. And that, she's from Vancouver, Ryan's hometown. And it just grew from there.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. So tell me about you. Are you an iOS or an Android guy on your phone?
I'm iOS.
And tell me apps that you can't live without. What are you in there every day on? What apps are kind of running your life?
MLB Trade Rumors. What, are you kidding me? Like, what, you're not? MLB at bat and MLB. I'm a massive baseball fan.
Blue Jays?
And, yeah, Blue Jays. Yeah, for sure, Blue Jays. But everything.
Yeah.
And especially now, the winter meetings just finished, and so it's just filled with like what every team is doing and rumors and deals and everything else.
How about Vancouver Canadians? Are you a Vancouver Canadians fan?
Well, yeah, they're in the Blue Jays system. They're the high A team or low A team for the Blue Jays.
Okay.
And a great park in Vancouver.
Yeah.
So I but that is my go-to. I toggle between that and Instagram on a regular basis.
Okay. Are you a big Instagrammer, stories, putting stuff out there, or are you more of a watcher, observer? No,
I have an almost 2-year-old, and
Nice.
so when you go to my feed, it's either speaking stuff, I'm on the road somewhere speaking to somebody, or it's my kid, Max, he's just adorable. Who am I to withhold that cuteness from the world?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So, okay, you go and speak at events. What's your advice to people who are attending the events you speak at if they want to get a nugget from you or catch your attention when you're, at an event?
If they want to talk to me at an event?
Yeah. What's their advice for someone who's you're speaking a lot, you're going to a lot of places. What's been your best interactions and the best kind of engagement you've had with, audience members or people attending events?
Well, I think people who they just genuinely want to learn. Like I don't know. I think it either ends up in a couple of different things. So one, I get people who come up who have been reading or following or something, and I don't know they exist. And that's always such a great surprise. I remember I was actually in Vancouver, and somebody came up to me and said, just so you know, I do about 55 decks pitches a year to big brands, and I won't tell you where she worked, but she's like, this is what I do. And I, for the past 3 years, every single one of those decks has a first page, and on that first page is a quote from you.
Nice.
And I was like, what? Who are you? Like, I didn't know, there's no idea. And I was like, what was the quote? Like, what's the quote? And it was something I said like 5 years ago or something. That blew me away, right? And I think that given this world of digital communications, that there are people who do inspire us and who inform us. And I think every once in a while, I try and let those people who inspire and inform me let them know that I just love their stuff. I just keep doing what you're doing. I love your content. And when someone does that to me, I'm blown away and eternally grateful. It's either that, or it's somebody who's like, how do I work with your agency? Yeah. Which is, very, very nice. But without really knowing what we do and the type of clients we work with. Or it's somebody who they're just eager to pitch slap me, right? They're like, I own a thing and I want to sell it to you. And so the whole time I was like, oh, then you didn't really listen to the speech. Because I hate that. And I hate if I'm seen as doing it, and I hate us as an agency ever doing it, that it's really, I don't know, it's just irresponsible and it's ineffective. It just doesn't work because I smell it a mile away. And I think, the people that I really connect with are the people who genuinely like or want to talk about the content that I've shared, whether they agree with it or disagree with it, and just have a genuine conversation where we both can end up with a unique perspective. And sometimes I have those relationships grow over time. And sometimes I reach out to those people and go, I now want to work with you on something. But it's taken time, and I see their value over time. The person that comes up and hands me the business card and says, go to my website, I got a thing I want, no, thanks. No, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. So tell us about a piece of mail that you got recently that left an impression.
Well, given, this will go to air later, but we're recording this at a time like just a week before Christmas or something. So I'm getting all the holiday cards from my friends and their children. And it's just, I love it. I absolutely love just seeing my friends' kids grow and just see these great. It's almost like we if we think we live a perfect world in social media, well, the holiday card is that like on steroids, right?
Yeah.
Every family looks so joyful and perfect and beautiful and everything. And I love getting that. I love getting those cards in the mail from my friends.
Yeah, that's really cool. So someone who runs an agency, you're speaking, you're writing, and you have a child. How do you balance that? Again, the fact that we have smartphones and we tend to and are available 24/7. How do you find that balance so you can be a parent and run an agency at the same time?
Yeah, my son is almost 2, and we have one on the way
Wow.
coming
Congrats.
in March. Thank you. And it's for. I didn't get married till I was 43, so I lived a life that was could be defined as improvised. Right? It was just like, whatever happens. I had no, real responsibilities other than a dog, So I just find that you just have to be way more structured in your time. And that's why I guess maybe I have that perspective on creative of like, you know what, writers write. That's what they do. Shut up and write. And so, and why when it comes to writing, like I wrote the book when I had a very segmented where I would write original stuff, like just cranking on first draft stuff when my son was napping or after he went to bed. So pretty much every night from when I was in town from 7 until 11 or 12 at night, I would write. But I would just crank on first draft stuff. And then planes and hotels, I would then go back and polish and do a second, third, fourth draft on what I had written. So you do that. And technology just helps. I mean, whether it's my wife and I sharing calendars and knowing when I'm going to be out of town or when she's got something planned for her own very important job and her very important social life, how do we just balance all that? And then when I'm on the road, my kid, Max is not even 2 and he knows what FaceTime is and knows that daddy is often, on the phone and we can connect that way. And and then I also break it up like what do I read? When do I read nonfiction? When do I read fiction? Like all that kind of stuff. So it just becomes very structured, which is probably the most difficult side for me. I'd lived an unstructured life, and now to accomplish the things I want to accomplish, I have to be way more left-brained in planning. Yeah.
I want to jump back to something you said earlier. Someone is in a meeting. They're trying to come up with a creative idea for a client. They make mugs for a living, right? You said, hey, just keep going, work harder, just keep coming up with the ideas, keep trying. What does that look like? Is it, you said, more time, or is it just more work? What does that work look like for you?
It can be, and there's an old improv exercise, or it's a legendary improv exercise called third choice. And third choice is that if somebody's on stage and you say, there once was a boy and his name was George, and then the audience goes, second choice, and you're like, oh, there once was a boy and his name was Frank. Third choice. And when you go from second choice, you're a little bit perturbed, right? Because everybody's got the first choice on the top of their head. You know what that immediate answer is. You have a default that's logical, it's safe, everything else. When someone pushes you to second choice, you're slightly annoyed. And you're like, okay, and you spend 2 seconds on it. And you go, okay, here's my second choice. And you go, what's your third choice? Then that's when the panic sets in. And the panic sets in, you're like, geez, I don't know. And you blurt out like Mary. And then you start to question yourself. Oh no, that's wrong. That's not a boy's name. Blah blah. And you're like, well, why can't it be a boy? Like what? And so you need to get into that uncomfortable zone, because when you push yourself into that space, that's where you lose your logic. That's where you lose your comfort, and that's when you lose your safety. And that's when the brilliant ideas show up. So if you're not in that zone, then you're just calling it in. And it doesn't mean that the first choice is the wrong choice. you may go back to it, and after taking in budgetary parameters and production cycles and everything else, and you may go, oh, you know what? It is actually that first choice. That is the best choice given everything else we know. But you still need to go to third and fourth choice in order to evaluate it properly. So on some level, there is a bit of a panic that you're not going to come up with it. And so when you hit that stage, then you need to keep looking. And that can be, if it's a brand thing, it's like, well, let's go back and maybe we need to use the product ourselves, and like, are there ideas that come from using it? Or maybe we need to go to that location where that person was. Like I remember I did some work with an old partner. We were doing some brand work for CN Tower, and we were coming up with stuff. I'm like, I don't know, I don't like it. And we were like, let's go down there. Like, come on, of course we need to go down there. So we go down there, and we're in the elevator going up the CN Tower, and we say to people, why did you come here? Like all these tourists, we just start having these conversations. Why did you come here? And the people looked at us like idiots, and they were like, well, this is your place. Like, this is when I'm in Toronto. Like, if I go to San Francisco, I go to the Golden Gate Bridge. If I go to India, I go to the Taj Mahal. If I go to London, I go to the Tower of London or London Bridge or something. When I'm in Toronto, this is where I come. Yeah. And so that came up with this whole campaign, and it was the CN Tower juxtapositioned against the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah. And all these other world famous landmarks. Brilliant. And the line was like, above us only sky, and you got to kind of see it or something like that. I don't remember the line, but we would have never got there because it just seemed so safe if we just hadn't embedded ourselves into an elevator with tourists.
Cool. What is Vancouver's CN Tower?
Stanley Park. It's Stanley.
Yeah. Park. Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Sure. Yeah, okay. Stanley Park, And
Stanley Park.
I'm in Vancouver a lot, and I still loved going into Stanley Park. Because when you're there, that's where you got to go.
Okay, here's one for you. Your team comes up with this genius idea, right? It's your third, fourth, fifth choice. It's this. You nurtured it, you got it, you pitch it to the client. They say no. They just give you a hard no. And then 2 months later, their competitor does that exact idea, right? And then they're upset, you guys are upset. How do you handle that as a creative when you saw something so genius and it just got thrown to the wayside and then someone else does it?
There's two responses. One is, why aren't they seeing this? Like, why aren't they seeing the brilliance of this? Why don't they see that this will actually be fundamental to their business? And so I think you have to get at the heart of that. And is it the presentation? Is it like there are politics at play that we don't know about? And, what's the difference between where we are and where we need to get to? And what role can I play in helping that happen? The second thing, when you look at that, is sometimes you need to go like, maybe as founder, like maybe that's my time to step in and have a heart to heart, because I don't want to step on the toes of our team here, but sometimes I can just say stuff that they can't. Yeah. And I just get away with it, right? Yeah. And I just go, what are you like? You're crazy. Yeah. Like you're crazy. You need to do this. Like I don't understand what's happening here. Yeah. The balance of that, though, is that no two organizations are the same, and that there are things at play, always things at play, that we as trusted advisors of that brand will never have exposure to, and that we'll never gain an appreciation for, and that's our role. We don't have those things, so therefore we can come with an outside objective perspective with new and interesting ideas. If you open that up to us, we're too inside, and we'll get swallowed by the thing, and you'll get less creativity. So that just comes with the territory. Like, hey, sometimes they know stuff that we don't know, and they're right. Like, they actually are right, and we just can't see it. And sometimes we're right, and they can't see it. And so I think it just comes with trust, and I think how you grow that trust is to then not go back and go, ha ha, told you so.
Yeah.
Because that's just not cool. I feel for a client, because if I say something that doesn't work, I have other clients. If they approve something that doesn't work, they don't have another job.
Yeah.
So they have more on the line than I have on the line, than we have on the line. And every partner needs to appreciate that.
Wow. Well, this was some incredible insights. Ron, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you being on the show. There's some nuggets of wisdom. I'm sure they'll be quoted possibly in future people's decks. Thank you everyone for joining us today on Marketing Jam. Again, thank you Canada Post for sponsoring. If you don't have a copy of Insight Magazine yet, this glow-in-the-dark version has Ron on the inside, expanding even further on some of the topics he discussed today in the form of an article, and they will mail this to you physically, and you can touch it and open it, read it anywhere in your agency's office or in your home office or even in your home. You could even take it on a plane with you. So thank you for joining us today on Marketing Jam, and we'll see you next week on the Jam.